I'm starting today's video with a wide shot of my studio because I'm going to start discussing today's topic sort of in the middle, and then we're going to go back in time. So let me get up and take you for a little walk. And behind this door is a small bathroom, and in the shower, okay, is some mead. Okay, now I started this mead exactly 4 weeks ago today, and so the rest of this video I'm going to go back and talk about the starting of the mead and where we go from here. It's not done, so there will be another video, perhaps 2 or 3, following up on the mead project. But today we're going to start at the beginning. Okay, so like I said, 4 weeks ago I started making this gallon of mead. I haven't made mead since I was in college, to be honest. So I have no idea if it's going to turn out okay or not, but I'm hopeful. Mead is perhaps the oldest alcoholic beverage that humans have consumed, and probably accidentally they found it occurring in nature and figured it out. Because there is honey in nature, there is water in nature, and there is yeast in nature, and that's all it takes to make mead. Okay, mead is honey wine. So as long as you get the concentration of the honey and water to a point where it makes the yeast reasonably happy, you're going to get mead. So I'm trying to do a little bit better than just the barely acceptable. So let's start out by talking about the ingredients that I used. Okay, so if you want to make some mead, you want to assemble some basic ingredients and materials. I started out with a couple of bottles of honey, a bag of Bigelow's Constant Comment tea, and some bread yeast and some raisins. Okay. Now, like I said, technically to make mead, all you need is honey, water, and yeast, and you will get a brew with alcohol that tastes like honey. Okay, it'll be kind of a one-note beverage. So I wanted to add a little bit of depth to my mead, and so I added the tea and the raisins. Okay, so obviously raisins have a nice rich flavor. They are grapes. We make wine out of grapes. Okay, you can make wine out of raisins. So that will add hopefully some nice dried fruit notes. Also, the yeast will consume some of the components of the raisins and produce other chemicals and flavors. Okay, the tea, any black tea is going to add some tannins to the brew and give you some of those sort of flavors. I like a nice dry wine, and I like a nice dark tea, so I want to add those flavors. Constant Comment has in it sweet spices and orange zest, which I thought would also complement and add depths of flavor to the brew. So that's the recipe I used. I used regular bread yeast. Okay, Fleischmann's is a very good yeast. I've been using it for years and years and years for making bread, obviously, and making beer, and it's a very good yeast. If you look on the internet, you'll see, oh, you have to use wine yeast or you have to use this yeast, and different. All yeasts are the same species, okay? They're all the same species. The differences between yeasts are subtle. Okay, some yeasts will go to a slightly, they'll have a higher alcohol tolerance, so you can make a higher alcohol brew with them, or some yeasts will precipitate out better, and you'll get a slightly clearer brew. And so, if you want to use other yeasts and take advantage of those characteristics, by all means. But this is basically about as inexpensive and simple and tasty a recipe as I could come up with. Okay, so I used 2 ounces of raisins. Okay, which is not a huge amount. Okay, I didn't want it to be a raisin wine. I wanted it to be a mead with some raisin notes. Okay, so just 2 ounces. Okay, I took the honey, and you'll find it's much easier to work with the honey if you soak it in a bath of hot water. That'll loosen it up and make it easier to pour. If you've ever tried pouring honey, you know it's very thick and viscous. Heating it up, you don't want to get carried away, but putting it in a hot water bath and heating it up will make it much easier to pour. Okay, I also started steeping a cup of tea with the constant comment. Actually, 2 cups of water to make the tea. Again, going as simple as possible. I have installed a hot water tap in my kitchen, so that gives me 190 degree water, and so I just steeped it in that. The raisins I chopped up, okay, 2 or 3 pieces per raisin. I didn't get carried away into them one by one. I chopped them up coarsely, basically to break the skin and let the insides of the raisins be exposed to the brew, so that the various flavors of the raisin could diffuse out into the liquid, and the yeast could get at it, and all the good things. If you just throw the raisins in whole, raisins are grapes, and grapes have skin, and the skin protects the insides from the outside, and you don't get much flavor. Okay, so chop up the raisins and let them out. Okay, when you make wine, you crush the grapes to get the skins broken. So. Okay, so next I added the honey to my fermentation bottle. Okay, use a funnel because honey is messy and sticky, and you don't want to get it all over. So, especially if you're holding a camera with one hand and pouring with the other, you want to use a funnel. Okay, after the honey, I added the tea. Okay, the tea is hot. It's water, so it rinses the honey that's in the funnel down into the bottle. We don't want to waste any of that honey. It's the most expensive part of this process, so you want to get all the honey down in there. Okay, then I added the raisins, and as you can see, we have 3 different densities of liquid here. We have the honey on the bottom, the raisins floating on the honey, and the tea floating on the raisins and the honey. So that's a problem. Okay, it's kind of neat. Okay, but that shows you the different densities of the liquid. So the next step is to add the yeast and then shake all that up. Okay, so I gave it a quick shake, and then I added the yeast. Okay, using a dry funnel. Okay, you need 2 funnels to do this, because if you try to put the yeast in a wet funnel, it's just going to stick in the funnel. It's not going to go into the brew. So dry funnel, added the yeast. Okay, and then shook it up. Okay, so you can see the particles of yeast there are now dispersed in the fluid. There's no layers of liquid. those bubbles on the top are just bubbles from shaking it. Just like if you shake soapy liquid or whatever, you're going to get bubbles. Okay, so so the yeast haven't started doing anything yet. They haven't woken up yet. But the between the honey and the tea steeping and cooling down, this water, this mixture here is probably 80 to 100 degrees, which is a perfectly happy temperature for yeast, and they'll do just fine. Okay, so then I filled up the rest of the bottle with water, lukewarm water, again around 100 degrees, and I filled it up to the shoulder of the bottle there to leave some air space, some room, because the yeast are going to make some foam in the beginning. Okay, they're gonna start producing alcohol and carbon dioxide in short order, and the carbon dioxide is going to make bubbles, and as you can see, this thick sugary liquid tends to foam, so you want to leave room for that so that it doesn't blow all the way up the bottle. Okay, and then in the top of the bottle I've put an airlock. Okay, so there's a rubber stopper with a hole in it and an airlock, and that airlock just is a tube with some water and a cap over the top, and it basically prevents anything from getting into our brew and spoiling it. Okay, because you don't want any bacteria or bugs or anything to get in there and spoil it, but it lets the carbon dioxide gas that the yeast produce get out. Okay, it also keeps the oxygen out because the oxygen will also spoil it. Now, when we shook it up, we added a whole lot of oxygen to the brew. That's true. But the yeast like the oxygen in the beginning. The yeast will use the oxygen as they're multiplying rapidly to build their colony and consume that oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Then the carbon dioxide will fill up the top of the bottle because it's heavier than oxygen. It'll push whatever oxygen is in there out the top through the airlock, and we're good. So as long as you shake it up real good, give the yeast some oxygen to consume, and then they'll go to town making carbon dioxide, and there will be no more oxygen in there for the rest of the time. So just don't take the cork out, don't take the airlock out, and you're good. Now, I was just at the brew store the other day. The airlocks there, I got a different kind. They have S-shaped ones now that you can get. But the airlocks are like 99 cents. Okay, it's not a huge investment, and you can use them over and over and over. So 99 cents for that, less than $1 for a rubber stopper, and you're good. Okay, the bottle was free. Okay, it came with a bottle of wine. So that's you can buy a bottle. They're like $6 or $7, or you can buy a bottle of wine and get the bottle for free. So once I was finished preparing the brew, the mead. I put it in a shower off my studio, as you saw, to keep it warm and dark and in a place where if it happened to overflow, sometimes the yeast get overzealous, it wouldn't make a mess. Okay, so you can put it in your bathtub, whatever. You want it room temperature, you want it dark most of the time. A seldom used bathroom works just fine for that. Okay. Now, this was 7 hours after I pitched the yeast. Okay, which is putting the yeast into the must, they call it. So 7 hours. The bubbles from shaking it are long gone. Okay, these bubbles are from the yeast going to town eating the sugar. So the yeast are happily eating the sugar and spitting out carbon dioxide and alcohol, which is exactly what we want them to do. So you'll see lots of foaming action. The raisins now have floated at this point. It's kind of hard to see, but they're floating on the top. So that's what's going on. That's just 7 hours after starting. Okay. The next day, I stuck the fermenter up on a stool because I got tired of getting down on the ground to check on it. So that's what's going on here. Okay. I have no idea. Okay. So we're back to where we started. Okay. Today, it's been exactly 4 weeks since I started this, and you can see there's no foam left. Okay, there's a few tiny little bubbles. The yeast are still producing a little bit of carbon dioxide. Okay, not a lot. The airlock bubbles every once in a while, but it's really slowed down. The fermentation is almost done. Okay. You can also see that a lot of the color has gone out of most of the raisins. Okay, so that has shown that all the goodness in the raisins is diffused into the mead and been munched on by the yeast, and so that's another sign that we're getting near the end there. Okay, and then this is the bottom of the fermenter, and you can see that the yeast are settling out of solution. Okay, so what that means is that as the sugar is consumed and the alcohol level goes up, the yeast have less and less to eat, and the alcohol is toxic to them. Okay, so they go dormant and they fall out of solution. Okay, so that layer at the bottom is sleepy yeast. Okay, and some of them just sort of stuck to the side on the way down to the bottom, and that's good. So the more they settle out, okay, the clearer the mead will get. Okay, and so again, the settling out shows that we're getting near the end of the fermentation process. So it's probably close to time to rack this, which is to say to siphon off the clear mead from the yeast and the raisins and leave them behind, so that the brew can settle some more and clear some more, and the yeast that are in there can finish up doing what they're doing, and then give the flavors time to meld and age a bit. So that'll be in part 2. I'll rack this and show you how I do that, and then we'll probably also take a taste and see how it's doing, and then let it set some more.